Today we're going to change the Haldex coupling oil on our Volkswagen Type 6 California van. It's a 4MOTION 2 litre TDI, which is the same as a Type 6 transporter. It's important that the van is on a level surface, so I reversed up some ramps at the rear and I jacked up the front to make sure it was level. If your van's at standard height, you might be able to do this without jacking it up if there's enough room underneath. The tools you're going to need is a 5mm Allen key, an 8mm Allen key, a 10mm spanner, but I used a small socket set, and a T10 Torx bit. I also used a couple of small screwdrivers, a light, a syringe to pump the fluid back in, and some kitchen towel or rags just to mop up drips. I also used a VCDS Vagicom unit, which we'll come on to later. I'll show you what that was about. To start with, I cleaned up the fill plug. It's always important to undo that first because you don't want to drain all the oil out and then find you can't get new stuff in. You need the 5mm Allen key to undo this one. I then moved to the other side and loosened the drain bolt using the 8mm Allen key. Catch the oil as it comes out into a tray or something, and you'll see on our van we've done about 108,000 miles, I think. It's got a full Volkswagen service history, and the oil was quite nice, but as the flow reduced, quite sludgy stuff did come out. I'll show you later when we do the pump why this did need changing. I then moved on to removing the Haldex pump. I think this is part they don't necessarily do at the Volkswagen dealership, not sure why. Ours had a rubber sort of sleeve around the pump, I imagine sort of sound deadening or something, which blocked access to the bolts holding it on, so I had to slide that off. I got a bit frustrated with that, so then I moved on to the electrical connection, which is really fiddly. It's back near the fill plug. There's not a great deal of access to it, so I used a little screwdriver just to lower the catch and then pull it off. The cable itself is attached to the front of the differential with some plastic clips. They just sort of squeeze the back of them and they pull off. And make sure the cable is nice and loose before you remove the pump. So there's two 10mm bolts holding the pump on, one sort of at the top, one sort of at the bottom. Undo those, they're quite long, but they came out nice and easy. With the bolts out, you then wiggle the pump and it does come out. It's a little bit difficult, it's quite tight in there, but it does come out. So you'll see now why I took the pump out. There's this sort of plastic filter on the front of it that gets absolutely caked in just dirt, debris, which is obviously not great for it. I don't think it's ever been off before, so it's 100 and something thousand miles worth of grime. So once I was out from underneath the van, got the pump itself out and two T10 Torx bits to take this little plastic filter off. I cleaned the little filter with white spirit. It cleaned up pretty nicely. The service kit I bought came with 2 new O-rings, all new bolts, the oil itself and the syringe. So here I'm just taking the old O-rings off the pump, put the new ones on in a second. There's a slightly smaller one and a slightly larger one. The kit tells you where they go, but the big one's on the inside, small ones on the outside. So back under the van now, I'm just putting the new drain plug back in. Comes with a copper washer to seal it. Time to put the pump back on. I put some oil on the O-rings to try and help it go in without snagging anything. It sort of went almost all the way in, and kind of was quite difficult. I think it was just the O-rings sealing it. It was quite hard to push it in. Got the bolts in, tightened it up, and it went in really nicely. So with the pump back on, I then slid forward and reconnected the electrical cable back into the control unit. I then used the syringe that came with the service kit and a small plastic pipe to refill the unit. I've got about 700ml, 750ml, something like that in at this point. It needs a bit more than that, which is what we do in the next step. So I filled the unit with as much oil as I could. It started dribbling out, and then I put the fill plug back in. I then plugged in my computer and the VCDS software. Not everyone's going to have that. I think, to be honest, you could probably just take the van for a drive at this point and achieve the same results, but as I've got it, I used it. You go into the all-wheel drive control module, which I think is module 22, and you select pump motor, and it will run a program where it primes the pump and gets all the air out of the system. So I set that to run. I've left all the recording in now. It's a bit long and boring, but you might hear in the background the pump sort of squealing. It goes on for a little while. It sort of runs up and increases speed, then stops, and then turns on 2 or 3 times more. You'll see it says running in the middle of the screen there. When it's finished, it says something like run successfully. First time I did this, it didn't get to that point, it just stopped. I think maybe because the fluid hadn't got all the way around the system, so I ran it a second time and it worked. After that was done, I turned the engine back off, shut the computer down, went back under the van, and I managed to get another couple of 100 mils worth of fluid into the unit. So filled it to the point that it was just dribbling out of the fill plug, which is the level it should be. As I say, if you don't have the computer, I think you get the same results just by going for a drive, let the oil circulate and then fill it back up. And that's it, that's all I did. Time to get cleaned up. And if you do this and you break your van, please don't blame me.